What's going on, everyone? This is Truth in Focus. If you guys have happened to stumble upon this channel, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments down below. I am trying to read every single book in the Bible. We're beginning with Genesis. Today I'll be trying to read from chapters 11 through 15. And let's get started. Chapter 11, The Tower of Babylon. At first, the people of the whole world had only one language and used the same words. As they wandered about in the east, they came to a plain in Babylonia and settled there. They said to one another, "Come on, let's make bricks and bake them hard." So they had bricks to build with and tar to hold them together. They said, "Now let's build a city with a tower that reaches the sky, so that we can make a name for ourselves and not be scattered all over the earth." Then the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which they had built. And he said, "Now then, these are all one people, and they speak one language. This is just the beginning of what they are going to do. Soon they will be able to do anything they want. Let us go down and mix up their language so that they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. The city was called Babylon, because the Lord mixed up the language of all the people, and from there he scattered them all over the earth. Continuing over to the descendants of Shem. These are the descendants of Shem. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he had a son, Arpachshad. After that, he lived another 500 years and had other children. When Arpachshad was 35 years old, he had a son, Shelah. After that, he lived another 403 years and had other children. When Shelah was 30 years old, he had a son, Eber. After that, he lived another 403 years and had other children. When Eber was 34 years old, he had a son, Peleg. After that, he lived another 430 years and had other children. When Peleg was 30 years old, he had a son, Reu. After that, he lived another 209 years and had other children. When Reu was 32 years old, he had a son, Serug. After that, he lived another 207 years and had other children. When Serug was 30 years old, he had a son, Nahor. After that, he lived another 200 years and had other children. When Nahor was 29 years old, he had a son, Terah. After that, he lived another 119 years and had other children. After Terah was 70 years old, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Moving forward to the descendants of Terah. These are the descendants of Terah, who was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran was the father of Lot, and Haran died in his hometown of Ur in Babylonia. While his father was still living, Abram married Sarai, and Nahor married Michaiah, the daughter of Haran, who was also the father of Iscah. Sarai was not able to have children. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, who was the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, Abram's wife, and with them he left the city of Ur in Babylonia to go to the land of Canaan. They went as far as Haran and settled there. Terah died at the age of 207. And this concludes chapter 11 of Genesis. This is chapter 13, God's call to Abram. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your country, your relatives, and your father's home, and go to a land that I am going to show you. I will give you many descendants, and they will become a great nation. I will bless you and make your name famous, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And through you I will bless all the nations." When Abram was 75 years old, he started out from Haran, as the Lord had told him to do, and Lot went with him. Abram took his wife, Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all the wealth and all the slaves they had acquired in Haran, and they started out for the land of Canaan. When they arrived in Canaan, Abram traveled through the land until he came to the sacred tree of Moriah, the holy place of Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were still living in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, "This is the country I am going to give to your descendants." Then Abram built an altar there to the Lord, who had appeared to him. After that, he moved on to the south to the hill country east of the city of Bethel, and set up his camp between Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he also built an altar and worshipped the Lord. Then he moved on from place to place, going toward the southern part of Canaan. is Abram in Egypt. But there was a famine in Canaan, and it was so bad that Abram went further south to Egypt to live there for a while. When he was about to cross the border into Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "You are a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will assume that you are my wife, and so they will kill me and let you live. Tell them that you are my sister. Then because of you, they will let me live and treat me well." When he crossed the border into Egypt, the Egyptians did see that his wife was beautiful. Some of the court officials saw her and told the king how beautiful she was. So she was taken to his palace. Because of her, the king treated Abram well and gave him flocks of sheep and goats, cattle, donkeys, slaves, and camels. Because the king had taken Sarai, the Lord sent terrible diseases on him and on the people of his palace. Then the king sent for Abram and asked him, "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say that she was your sister, and let me take her as my wife? Here is your wife. Take her and get out." The king gave orders to his men, so they took Abram and put him out of the country, together with his wife and everything he owned. This concludes chapter 12 of Genesis. Now moving on to chapter 13. This is chapter 13 of Genesis. Abram and Lot separate. Abram went north out of Egypt to the southern part of Canaan, with his wife and everything he owned, and Lot went with him. Abram was a very rich man, with sheep, goats, and cattle, as well as silver and gold. Then he left there and moved from place to place, going towards Bethel. He reached the place called Bethel and Ai, where he had camped before, and he had built an altar. There is where he worshipped the Lord. Lot also had sheep, goats, and cattle, as well as his own families and servants. And so there was not enough pasture land for the two of them to stay together, because they had too many animals. So quarrels broke out between the men who took care of Abram's animals and those who took care of Lot's animals. Then Abram said to Lot, "We are relatives, and your men and my men shouldn't be quarreling, so let's separate. Choose any part of the land you want. You go one way, and I'll go the other." Lot looked around and saw that the whole Jordan Valley, all the way to Zoar, had plenty of water, like the garden of the Lord, or like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord had destroyed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose the whole Jordan Valley for himself and moved away towards the east. This is how the two men parted. Abram stayed in the land of Canaan, and Lot settled among the cities in the valley and camped near Sodom. Those people were wicked and sinned against the Lord. Abram moves to Hebron. After Lot had left, the Lord said to Abram, "From where you are, look carefully in all directions. I am going to give you and your descendants all the land that you see, and it will be yours forever. I am going to give you so many descendants that no one will be able to count them all. It would be as easy as to count all the specks of dust on earth. Now go and look over the whole land, because I am going to give it all to you." So Abram moved his camp and settled near the sacred trees of Mamre at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. That concludes chapter 13. Let's move on to chapter 14. 4 kings: Amraphel of Babylonia, Arioch of Elasar, Chedorlaomer of Elam, and Tidal of Goliath went to war against 5 other kings: Beru of Sodom, Bishra of Gomorrah, Shobab of Adam, Shabir of Zeboiim, and the king of Bela, or Zor. These 5 kings had formed an alliance and joined forces in Siddim Valley, which is now known as the Dead Sea. They had been under the control of Chedorlaomer for 12 years, but in the 13th year they rebelled against him. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and his allies came up with their armies and defeated the Rephaim and Ashtaroth, Kiriaim, the Zuzim and Ham, and the Em in the plain of Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the mountains of Edom, pursuing them as far as Ephraim on the edge of the desert. Then they turned around and came back to Kadesh. They conquered all the land and the Amalekites and defeated the Amorites who lived in the Sazon Tamar. Then the kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Ador, Zeboiim, and Bela drew up their armies for battle in the Siddim Valley and fought against the kings of Edom, Goliam, Babylonia, and Elasar, 5 kings against 4. The valley was full of tar pits. And when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah tried to run away from the battle, they fell into the pits. But the other 3 kings escaped to the mountains. The 4 kings took everything in Sodom and Gomorrah, including the food, and went away. Lot, Abram's nephew, was living in Sodom, so they took him and all his possessions. But a man escaped and reported this to Abram, the Hebrew, who was living near the sacred trees belonging to Mamre, the Amorite. Mamre and his brothers, Eshcol and Aner, were Abram's allies. When Abram heard that his nephew had been captured, he called together all the fighting men in his camp, 318 in all, and pursued the four kings all the way to Dan. There he divided his men into groups, attacked the enemy at night, and defeated them. He chased them as far as the Habor, north of Damascus, and got back all the loot that he had been taken. He also brought back his nephew Lot and his possessions, together with the woman and the other prisoners. When Abram came back from his victory over Chedorlaomer and the other kings, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in Shavia Valley, also called King's Valley. And Melchizedek, who was the king of Salem, and also a priest of the Most High God, brought bread and wine to Abram, blessed him, and said, May the Most High God, who made heaven and earth, bless Abram. May the Most High God, who gave you victory over your enemies, be praised. And Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the loot he had recovered. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Keep the loot, but give me back my people. Abram answered, I solemnly swear before the Lord, the Most Highly God, maker of heaven and earth, that I will not keep anything of yours, not even a thread or a sandal strap. Then you can never say, I am the one who made Abram rich. I will take nothing for myself. I will only accept what my men have used, but let my allies, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, take their share. This concludes chapter 14. Now let's move on to chapter 15, God's covenant with Abram. After this, Abram had a vision and heard the Lord say to him, Do not be afraid, Abram. I will shield you from danger and give you a great reward. But Abram answered, Sovereign Lord, what good will your reward do to me, since I have no children? My only heir is Eliezer of Damascus. You have given me no children, and one of my slaves will inherit my property.
Then he heard the Lord speaking to him again. The slave Eliezer will not inherit your property. Your own son will be your heir. The Lord took him outside and said, Look at the sky and try to count the stars. You will have as many descendants as that. Abram put his trust in the Lord, and because of this the Lord was pleased with him and accepted him. Then the Lord said to him, I am the Lord, who led you out of Ur in Babylonia, to give you this land as your own. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that it will be mine? He answered, Bring me a cow, a goat, and a ram, each of them 3 years old, and a dove and a pigeon. Abram brought the animals to God, cut them in half, and placed the halves opposite each other in 2 rows. But he did not cut up the birds. Vultures came down on the bodies, but Abram drove them off. When the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and fear and terror came over him. The Lord said to him, Your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land. They will be slaves there, and they will be treated cruelly for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them. And when they leave their foreign land, they will take great wealth with them. You yourself will live to a ripe old age, die in peace, and be buried. It will be 4 generations before your descendants come back here, because I will not drive out the Amorites until they become so wicked that they must be punished. When the sun had set, and it was a dark and smoky fiery pot, and a flaming torch suddenly appeared, and passed between the pieces of the animals. Then and there the Lord made a covenant with Abram. He said, I promise to give your descendants all this land, from the border of Egypt to the Euphrates River, including the lands of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, and the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and all the Jebusites.
My brothers and sisters, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be with me to read these passages of scripture. Thank you so much. Please leave any comments and suggestions below. I do have Minecraft gameplay because that way I could do what I enjoy, which is playing Minecraft and reading the Bible, which I'm trying to do more of. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video. If you made it till the end, please leave any suggestions for the channel below, and please subscribe, hit that like button, and thank you for watching and listening. Goodbye now.